Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a highly structured, purely objective look at a movement that, honestly, shapes massive parts of our global culture and society. To really grasp today's world, you kind of have to understand this framework. We're going to break down American evangelicalism, drawing directly from the rigorous academic evaluation by historian and theologian Dr. Roger Green. We're stripping away the noise and looking at the actual anatomy of the whole shebang.
So what actually defines American evangelicalism? It's a word we hear literally everywhere, right? Especially in the news. But the real answer is much, much deeper than just modern political assumptions. To really get it, we have to look way past today's headlines and explore the actual historical and theological roots that built this movement from the ground up.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the tenets of evangelicalism, then look at weaknesses from within, move on to a broader positive appraisal, and finally tackle the challenges and blind spots. All right, starting with Section 1, the anatomy, the core tenets of evangelicalism. Let's lay the groundwork.
Now, this framework was actually designed to overcome anti-intellectualism. The foundational tenet here is that all truth is God's truth, whether we're talking about science, math, or philosophy. It relies on a super high authoritative view of Scripture based on what the writers intended. But look at those bottom 2 points on the list. Evangelicalism is inherently transdenominational, meaning it recognizes truth across Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant lines. And since it views believers as stewards of the world, it naturally drives toward active engagement in public policy and the common good.
Now, one of the absolutely most vital tenets of the movement is personal conversion. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Dietrich Bonhoeffer famously noted that identifying personally with Christ isn't just some little addition to the religion. Christ is the bread itself, or nothing at all. Dr. Green highlights this just to remind us that keeping Christ at the absolute center is the very core of the faith.
Of course, navigating the Bible can be pretty complex. Prominent evangelical scholar Alistair McGrath lays out a really fascinating principle here. He says that views attempting to be faithful to the Bible absolutely must be respected and honored, even when a plurality of very different ideas arises from the exact same passage. Honestly, it's a profound level of intellectual humility built right into the framework of how to approach faith.
Moving on to Section 2, the internal mirror, weaknesses from within.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the movement's harshest, most determined critics actually come from right within its own ranks. Historian Donald Deaton points out a massive historical gap here. Back in the 1800s, figures like Charles Finney saw absolutely no contradiction between preaching the gospel and being an ardent abolitionist. Early evangelicalism was defined by fighting for the poor, advocating for women in ministry, and leading major social reform. But internal critics argue that modern evangelicalism has largely abandoned those deep social commitments.
Then there is the issue of intellectual depth. And wow, this is a punchy, blockbuster critique straight from evangelical historian Mark Knoll. He said, "The scandal of the evangelical mind is that there isn't much of one." That is a harsh self-assessment regarding a growing intellectual shallowness within the movement. He was essentially challenging the community, insisting that they'd failed to do their intellectual homework and desperately needed to get back to serious, rigorous scholarship. Other major internal critiques focus on a profound loss of history and identity. There's a well-documented failure to appreciate the aesthetic richness and the liturgy of 2,000 years of church tradition, often acting as if the church was just invented yesterday. Furthermore, theologian David Wells issues a really severe warning. He says, the movement has accommodated so deeply to the broader culture that it has literally just sunk into it. According to Wells, if you can no longer distinguish the movement from secular society, well, it's lost its ability to speak to or challenge that society. Let's shift gears and see how this builds into Section 3, the broad lens, a positive appraisal of American Christianity. So, zooming out to the macro landscape of American Christianity as a whole, what has it actually gotten right? Well, one of the most undeniable positive appraisals is the massive historical impact of the American church's social conscience. The church basically served as the incubator for profound, world-changing movements. This social gospel, championed by figures like Walter Rauschenbusch, ultimately formed the bedrock of the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King Jr., whose message, remember, was developed directly within the church. The American church also completely shaped the landscape of global higher education. Dr. Green maps this out brilliantly into 3 distinct waves. The first wave saw the founding of massive institutions like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, which were originally built with Christian educational commitments. When those institutions shifted focus, a second wave popped up in the 19th century with schools like Oberlin College, really driving abolitionist thought. And finally, a third wave of Bible institutes and liberal arts colleges like Gordon College emerged. This rich, layered ecosystem of Christian higher education is virtually unique to the American landscape. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, the global blind spots and negative appraisals. Turning to the negative appraisals of the broader American Christian landscape, one of the most glaring pitfalls here is hyper-individualism. American culture prizes freedom and individual choice, but when that cultural trait bleeds too heavily into theology, it becomes pretty problematic. As Dr. Green notes, Christianity is a very personal religion, sure, but it was never meant to be private. This dangerous Jesus and me mindset leads to a total neglect of the larger body and the community of believers, basically breaking down the foundational idea of the church.
And this individualism often scales up into cultural myopia. American Christianity can be so intensely focused on its own context that it completely ignores the richness of the global church. Dr. Green shares this perfectly ironic anecdote about this. Back when the Soviet Union opened up, American missionary groups went on television raising money to translate the Bible into Russian. The catch? They were completely unaware that the Russian Bible had already existed for 1,000 years. It's just a striking example of a well-intentioned but deeply closed-off worldview. So, the crucial point is that these blind spots eventually cause deep institutional cracks. When you treat the church like a corporate business enterprise, disaster strikes. Dr. Green highlights a devastating trend where a low view of human flaws and sin is combined with a very high view of personal, charismatic accomplishment. He points to a famous California church that fell $50 million in debt simply because it was built on personal needs for visibility and giant building projects rather than serious theological training. When business metrics replace doctrinal rigor, the institution crumbles from the inside out.
All of this brings us to the ultimate question. As American Christianity continues its massive global mission efforts, we really have to look at what is actually in the suitcase. Are we exporting the pure trans-denominational faith we outlined at the beginning? Or, blinded by our own cultural myopia, are we simply exporting American exceptionalism and our own cultural values? It's a really complex reality, and definitely a provocative thought to leave you with as you consider the true anatomy of this powerful movement. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on The Explainer. We'll see you next time.